Hey, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Hey, maybe even good evening for some of you folks still working out there. My name is Dom Nicastro, senior reporter for CMS Wire. So happy to be partnering up today with AppsFlyer for this webinar, The State of E-Commerce App Marketing in a Privacy-Centric World. So happy to be on the call today. This is how things are going to break down. So we get our introductions, which is happening now. It's just housekeeping stuff. The meat of the show is we're going to have a fireside chat. I don't know if we're going to have fire or not, but we are going to have a chat. That's for sure. That's the meat of the show. After that, we're going to open the floor up to you. That's right. Live Q&A at the end of the show. And how do you do that? How do you get in the party for that? Use the Q&A module on the left side of your browser there to ask questions during the webinar. And those tabs, by the way, at the top and left of your browser have additional resources, including knocking on my little desk here, any technical support that might be needed. So that is us. That is us. We're the host today, CMS Wire. Again, I'm a senior reporter for them. Been working with these guys since 2014. We got a lot of editorial contributors, 3 primary topic areas: digital customer experience. How cool is that, given today's topic? We also cover digital workplace as well, information management. We have another website too, by the way, reworked.co. And the aforementioned sponsor of today's event, so happy to be partnering up with AppsFlyer. You can learn more about them at appsflyer.com. And the faces behind the voices you'll be seeing today, we have Brenda Chen, Director of Solutions Architecture at AppsFlyer, and her co-presenter is Angela Humphrey. She's a VP of Digital Development at YouAppi. And I'm just the guy who's facilitating these really smart women in this conversation. So that's all I am. I'm just a moderator. So at this time, I'm going to turn things over to Brenda for a little state of the state, set the tone before we get the fire going for that chat. Brenda, it's all you.
Thanks, Dom. Thanks for the kind introduction. So quickly, just introducing myself again. I'm Brenda, the Director of Solutions Architecture at AppsFlyer. And today we will be reviewing industry trends in the last year and a half, specifically in the e-commerce vertical. Lots of things happened during this time period, so let's dive right in. Let's start off by talking about the data sample. So AppsFlyer is the leading mobile attribution and marketing analytics company that help businesses gain visibility into their marketing efforts and translates these insights into business results. Since AppsFlyer works with a majority of the leading mobile apps across the globe, we sit on top of a large data set that allows us to review the key industry insights we are reviewing today. Specifically, within the e-commerce vertical, the data encompasses 4.5 billion app installs between January 2020 and July 2021. This consists of 650 e-commerce apps, each with over 5,000 installs per month. And we'll also be looking at 25 billion remarketing conversions within the same time frame. Now, let's first focus on 2020, and later we'll dive into 2021. Here, we're looking at the global e-commerce app install trend for 2020. Keep in mind, all of these graphs we'll be looking at is a normalized trend. So it's calculated by dividing the share of e-commerce installs by overall installs. So that's why you see a percentage on the y-axis here. And as you can see, there is an overall upward trend of app installs within the e-commerce vertical globally, ultimately building up to that 2020 holiday season, particularly in November, where you see users install apps for Black Fridays and single days in Asia. Now, layering on the North America data set, we see a bit of a different trend. The first COVID-19 lockdown created a surge with a peak in May that surpassed what we normally see in the holiday rush in November. So traditionally, there is clear seasonality in this vertical, right? We see peaks in Q4. However, what's interesting is that the pandemic basically upended all of this. And with physical stores closing and offices closing, it kickstarted a lot of growth in Q2. And we're seeing this as an unfreezing of a shift that was already happening. And we'll dive into that in a little bit. And continuing through this North America data set here is the app install trend broken out by platform. And as you can see, just looking at the Q2 spike in COVID and the Q4 rush, iOS Q2 surpassed Q4 by 15% and Android by 5%, which this may or may not be surprising for folks, but it's definitely unprecedented. It clearly indicates the accelerated digital transformation impact following COVID as end users shifted their typical purchasing behavior patterns over to mobile. But what happened after Q2? Why is there this drop? So looking at this data set, we see a shift in strategy once we look at the remarketing data set. Businesses focused on growing the user base in the first half of 2020. But by the second half, after prices surge a little bit, there's more of a focus on capitalizing on your existing audience by engaging them through retargeting. We clearly see in the data that in the second half of 2020, e-commerce industry doubled down on remarketing, not only within North America, but globally as well. Now, shifting into the UA spend, here is the average app install ad spend per e-commerce app in North America. Not surprisingly, this has trended upwards towards the Q4 holiday shopping season. But zooming out more on a global level, here is the app install ad spend in Q4 of 2020 and Q1 of 2021. We see that US still contributes to about a third of ad installs spend at $1.8 billion out of $5.4 billion spent. We also see in developing markets such as Brazil, India, Indonesia scaling up their campaigns, but the heavy spenders still reside within developed markets like UK and Germany and Japan. And now moving into 2021, here is the overall paid app install trend by platform in North America. And looking at January to February of 2020 to January, February 2021, which is pre versus post-pandemic, app installs are up 35% year over year. Again, we see this accelerated digital transformation due to COVID in 2020, and we'll continue to see this momentum into 2021. Back to see the holiday season in 2021 to reach new levels. Now, diving into more downstream metrics and user quality, here is the share of paying users in e-commerce app by platform in North America. Here you can see there's a couple of peaks in spring of 2020 and spring of 2021. The first one coinciding with the initial lockdown, and the second one coinciding with the US vaccine rollout, as well as the financial stimulus plan that released in March, April of 2021. However, the main thing we want to focus here is actually on the stable share of buyers, meaning that we are seeing consistent quality. This is not typically what we see. In previous quarters, we usually see in Q4 advertisers compete and outbid each other, leading to a drop in user quality. However, this year we didn't see that drop. We actually still see people spending money. COVID really changed user behavior patterns, and now more people are becoming heavy mobile users. There is this unblocking of existing demand and potential, meaning that there's more users, meaning there's more quality engagement, and having that stable paying user rates really means that we didn't reach a point of diminishing returns yet. So this all leads to this massive momentum in the e-commerce category, and I don't think we've seen that ceiling yet. And now continuing onto this growth conversation, here's the 2021 data of in-app purchase revenue trend in North America. Comparing the first half of 2020 with the first half of 2021, the consumer spend is up 35% year over year. And with the 2021 in-app spend peaking around in March, it exceeds the March 2020 numbers by 156%. So again, Q4 in-app spend is likely to reach new highs with the combination of accelerated digital transformation leading to more users, stable quality of users, and looking into the November 2020 data point of where we see a 16% spike in the holiday season over the previous year, we really do expect to see e-commerce in-app spend continue to grow within the 2021 holiday season. And of course, iOS 14.5, we can't talk about 2021 without iOS 14. So just to quickly recap, in late April 2021, Apple released the App Tracking Transparency, or ATT framework, as part of iOS 14.5. This change now requires users on this version and above to opt in order to share their IDFA with each app. Since IDFAs are identifiers utilized to remarket users after they leave your app, this has caused challenges in the remarketing space. So right now we're looking at the remarketing trends in North America. And you can see after the iOS 14.5 launch, iOS remarketing conversions dropped way below Android's and continue to drop up to about 50% 3 months after the launch. And Android dropped around 10%. Additionally, with the iOS 14.5 rollout, it just reduces the general remarketing audience size. And as of August 2021, we see about 83% of iOS e-commerce app users have been upgraded to iOS 14.5 and above. And out of those users, 42% of users who have been prompted opted in. And so this is one portion of the ecosystem we're still figuring out. And the second part is also fraud. So this is the app install fraud from 2020 to the first half of 2021. And as expected, we see app install fraud rates increase around increased e-commerce activity, right? So we see between May of 2020 to November of 2020, there's almost a 4.7 times increase of fraud rate. And now, so going into the Q4 2021 holiday season, as spend increase, we should also expect fraud to increase. However, with the changes in iOS 14.5, fraud detection may become harder, especially on iOS, due to the lack of user-level data. And so fraud can have ultimately a bigger impact, but it'll just be a little bit more difficult to detect. And zooming out a little bit, despite the swings in what's happening in US fraud rates still remain relatively low compared to other markets. So on average, we see about 10% app install fraud in the US, but in other countries, we can see anywhere between 10 to 41% within the same time frame. So that pretty much wraps up, the metrics that we have from our data set. And just to quickly recap, mobile transformation during the pandemic ended up being sort of a tide that lifted all boats because it unlocked existing mobile potential that was there all along. But over time, the space will continue to become more competitive. So it's important, especially for companies that are not digital first, to really fully integrate apps into their shopping experiences. Users will stick to apps that have better functionality. And we've compiled a number of best practices from most downloaded apps in the category. So let's review them together and see if there's any learnings that we can take. So the first is making your app easy to access. So Best Buy, what they've done is provide QR codes as well as opportunities to text an individual the app within their mobile on their website, but also in their store to help guide users transitioning into downloading their application, so making this easily accessible. Secondly, creating a continuous user journey is important. As we all know, seamless user experiences do drive better conversion rates. And here we can see Nike using a mobile web browser, and someone's on their website shopping at Nike for their Nike Air Force Ones. There's this banner that promotes an individual to go and download the application. And once they download and launch the app for the first time, they actually get to the same shoe on the first visit. And so having the seamless experience allow users to complete their user journey easily and have better conversion rates within your application. Additionally, you might want to think about integrating your experience across different channels. So Target's Circle Reward program specifically are for users on the desktop. And here they can clip coupons and discount codes so that they can use them when they check out. But they've also integrated this experience into the mobile app. Translating these coupons over to the mobile app, these users are now able to go into Target in store and leverage these coupons at the kiosks as they check out. So this is also something that's very interesting that Target has built into their application. Additionally, bridging the online to offline gap. Here, Walmart did something very interesting where in because of COVID, they are trying to promote individual self-checkouts that have a contactless experience. And so instead of having, all their Walmart stores integrate supporting Apple Pay for contactless, what they did instead is having those users move over to the app, take a picture of this QR code, download the app, and complete the journey within their application through Apple Pay. And so this is actually a very interesting strategy that Walmart took, but this is something that is very interesting in terms of integrating that mobile app experience into your in-store shopping experience. Lastly, using advanced capabilities on the app. So Home Depot also built a bunch of different interesting capabilities, such as augmented reality, taking a look at how these different furnitures or items will look in your home, but also an in-store navigation. I don't know if you've all experienced this, but it's actually quite great when you're trying to look for a specific nail or whatnot. They will tell you where to go directly in the store. But because of that great user experience, I now have the app, and I'll probably keep that until I finish all of my DIY projects at home, especially during COVID. But this is a great user experience if you have specific capabilities that help enhance the in-store experience as well as at-home experience as well. So this wraps up pretty much the presentation portion of the webinar. Hopefully these industry trends as well as best practices were insightful. And with that, I'll pass it over back to you, Dom.
Thanks, Brenda. Thanks for setting the tone there with the nice statistics and how things have played out. I'm telling you, like as a consumer myself, 2020, like the app experience, the e-commerce experience, the digital experience, that was make or break for companies. It wasn't just nice to have anymore. Hey, maybe we should get an app. If I don't put onions in my salad, I was going to the next restaurant. If I couldn't do that on my app, right? So that experience was just, for me, make or break, and obviously for a lot of others. Thanks for setting the tone there. I appreciate it. Now, Angela, in our practice run, I think you were the person that was going to get the fire going. Do you have that, or did that just not happen? Do you have some technical difficulties?
No, I'm ready to bring the fire.
Okay, good. You're going to bring the fire. Okay, good. Because we can't have a fireside chat without fire. But nonetheless, here we are. Our panelists are ready to go. We had the foundation set. Now we're going to get into some discussion. First, I'm going to kick things over to Brenda on this question. Again, great laying out the foundation with the numbers, the statistics to back what happened in the past year and a half. Now, we've seen how user behavior during the pandemic has rapidly shifted to mobile channels. So do you expect this exponential trend to continue, or will shopping app usage stabilize?
So based on the data we saw today, the pandemic has acted as somewhat of a catalyst for mobile transformation that sped up developments that were happening already in the app ecosystem. So I'd say it's unlikely that consumers will move away from the app, especially now that the initial hesitation of non-mobile savvy users are replaced by convenience and added benefits, which has always been there. And so as restrictions are lifted and consumers' mobility increases, the role of mobile apps should only increase, especially if there are more use cases for customers to engage with a shopping app even while in the store. That's why it's important to continue to build on this cross-platform experience and provide the additional functionalities within the application to keep the users in there. And additionally, again, back to the data, because I'm all about the data, the quality of users that were obtained through the campaigns in 2020 remain consistent even throughout the holiday season. And again, we typically see this drop due to saturation, but in 2020, we did not, meaning that we didn't really reach that inflection point yet. And so as more users are adopting shopping behaviors and habits within the mobile app, I've yet to see where that usage will stabilize, but we shall see.
It's amazing how 2020 was versus 2021 for marketers and for apps like this. 2020, you kind of had everything. We knew everything. We knew everything everybody went home, everybody went online. And now 2021 and 2022, it's like, so what's going to happen again? So the date, like you said, the data is so important to keep digging into. Moving on to another question, and I'm going to throw this over to Angela. Angela, you're going to make your debut in here outside of the fire thing. So you're going to talk about this topic of the webinar. So you're in the game now. what kind of marketing initiatives do you implement for a mobile e-commerce app growth strategy?
Yeah, so typically mobile marketers will start with Google UAC, Facebook, and Apple Search, and it's a great way to gain more of a presence on these platforms for brand awareness, but also for their user acquisition efforts and for the growth in those initial stages. Also, what would be great to add would be a mobile measurement partner like AppsFlyer to the mix, and that's for measurement purposes and to also expand with other channels like demand-side platforms or DSPs like YouAppi. And the DSPs are a way to expand reach outside of those initial platforms. For example, you'll be accessing in-app inventory programmatically where it could be, I want to reach more of a female audience, so let's go with casual gaming apps and photo editing apps, for example. And in addition to UA, at some point when that user base has grown exponentially, you can add retargeting in, and that would be to generate more revenue by encouraging and bringing back users in who maybe added an item to a cart but didn't actually complete the full user journey and purchase.
Now, you said Facebook, but just not this week, though, right? Kind of have a backup plan outside of Facebook and Instagram, right? Correct? Okay.
Definitely diversify.
Definitely diversify with them for sure. That was tough. I couldn't go scroll the news feed. I mean, how can I take a break from work without that? It was really hard. I'm telling you. I'll be the first to admit.
Yeah, I get you.
Angela, I'm going to stick with you. To what degree are retailers actually, pursuing these true cross-channel strategies? A lot of talk about cross-channel, but how are they pursuing these true cross-channel strategies to engage their customers? Or are these different channels mostly viewed in silos, honestly?
Yeah, so retail marketers are honestly the best use case for cross-channel. They use traditional routes with radio ads, billboards, bus signs, and that's more of your brand awareness. And there's TV commercials and connected TV spots for kind of like then routing to digital with email marketing, push notifications, social media, you name it. And that all works really well together with brand awareness and then transitioning to more performance marketing and measuring that performance of how you're reaching your users and what they're doing. So you can use these digital channels for user acquisition and retargeting. And since you can do more of that on like a quality basis, you can see a better view of how you're reaching those customers and what sort of customer acquisition costs are you generating and what targets. What then separates the channels would be how you evaluate that performance. So again, having a mobile measurement partner in place is super important, and a CRM. So you can track the user journey, follow across different channels, and measure the performance of the users. And then you evaluate them on their own because they're different marketing styles and they'll show different results. So for example, the cost to acquire a customer on Facebook would differ from a DSP and from Google and from Apple.
And Brenda, I know you wanted to weigh in here as well, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. Just to add on, we do see retailers pursuing this cross-channel strategy that's been across email, SMS, mobile push, basically what Angela mentioned. The most savvy retailers do use their specific properties in the mobile phone and integrate this into their strategies to create personalized messaging and user experiences. And working with lifecycle marketing and be able to measure this is really important. And on just a different note, it's also important to make sure that the app is ready to handle them, right? For example, deep linking functionality needs to be there to be incorporated to support seamless user experiences in app to increase conversion rates, right? Similar to the Nike example. Or having the app functionalities built out to support seamless user experience, especially in store, like Walmart and what they did with the seamless contactless checkout experience. So I think being able to think about app as more of a companion to your shopping experience is very important. And we also, for those that have brick and mortars, we need to zoom out from the in-app experience and think more about the in-store experience and how we can marry the two. So that would be something that would be interesting to think about.
Angela, I wanted to follow up on one thing you said. You talked about, retargeting, acquisition. We heard a lot in 2020. A lot of the analysts put this out there too, that, many brands, many marketers were just focusing on that retention, focusing on existing customers, who's in the wheelhouse, and how can we target them and keep them happy versus a lot of acquisition strategies were kind of put aside. And now we're seeing the flip now. We're seeing, marketers being more aggressive with acquisition now. The world's opening up. All kinds of good signs there. So the question is, what have you heard about that balancing act between customer acquisition and retention? What are you seeing out there in terms of where brands are focusing these days?
I think both still. They're definitely balancing the quantity of users and the quality of those users. So it's, of course, important to grow that user base, gain learnings as you grow from that user acquisition activity, learn more about who those audiences are and how to then retarget them to bring them back in to perform, more actions throughout the app user cycle for better retention and LTV. So it's really just honing in on those benchmarks as you go. They can change over time. They could be applied on different channels with different costs. So it's, understanding those KPIs that you have and seeing how you can utilize both routes to gain those quality users.
Yeah, and I remember a stat from before the pandemic from Mary Meeker and those internet trends she puts out every year that, the cost of customer acquisition can't outlast or can't be greater than customer lifetime value for much longer. She saw the scale tipping towards, you really got to focus on that lifetime value. So they're putting it out there. The right at the top, they're putting out those stats about, promoting customer lifetime value. Mm-hmm. Let's move on now. So talk to me a little bit about creatives. So as a shopping app, what should we keep in mind? Like things like experience with ads, feeds, videos, the creative side of things. Angela, I'll go with you on that one.
So definitely being on brand across your assets is key. So having that prominent branding and app icon and those brand colors being as recognizable as possible across these different assets on different channels. You're going to see that there's different specs that are required for these channels, but most likely you'll be utilizing static banners, interstitials, native and videos. And then to note for videos, essentially social media has changed our attention span to basically like 15 seconds. And so you want to have your video be no more than 30-second runtime as a maximum. And because of the orientation of your phone and how you're mostly looking at your phone, implementing portrait videos. From there, there's different types of variations and different runtimes. So for example, evergreen would be always on, maybe more brand specific and more about those brand colors. Whereas for a special variation, that would be run for a limited time, not really an always on, but for the upcoming holiday season, or there's a special offer, a special deal that you're promoting. So maybe some of the colors will be changed out and some of the copy. Also, what would change within your assets would be, and variations would be what you want the user to achieve when they're viewing that ad. So for user acquisition, the ad copy would be more about introducing the app. What are the best features? What's to highlight? And then for the call to action button on those assets, it would maybe be an install now, where the messaging on a retargeting campaign and those assets would be different, where retargeting could be advertising a new feature or that special deal that's happening. And it's obviously advertising to users who are more familiar. So the CTA button wouldn't really be an install now. They would have that on their phone, most likely already, just be more dormant. And so you'd want to prompt them to shop now. Another helpful tool that marketers will use is implementing a product feed. And again, more work with the MMP, which is great. They're a great tool for you. And so by implementing a product feed, it would be a table containing details about your products, including price, image. And when you set it up with your MMP, it allows for vendors like me to receive the information in real time. And then we will display the ads where the details will dynamically change based on the user behaviors of that user that's viewing the ad.
Yeah, you have any like sort of hard examples, like kind of visualizing a company doing this, like putting it into action? Any recent ones you can think of, or maybe ones that might quite not stick and do well?
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about a retail shopping experience where you're going into H&M and they're promoting their new fall collection, and they also have a corresponding app that's utilizing a dynamic product feed. So I go in and I see the store display and I don't end up buying, but later on I'm shown an ad with the same fall collection, and it's based on the location data of my earlier activities, and it's to either install the app, or it could be that I already have it on my phone and I'm prompted to shop now and click on the ad, open the app, and hopefully buy, that fall sweater that I've been wanting.
Angela, I get retargeted all the time by H&M, but it's only because my wife makes me use my email so she gets more deals. So I get it. I get it. I get it. Yeah. I've been on the unsubscribe trend lately, but it happens. I get it. Because she just wanted that one deal. I don't need to be a lifetime customer. Moving on. Thanks for that. Thanks for that actual vivid example. It really helps me visualize what's out there. So the next question would be for Brenda. Brenda, there have been a lot of changes in the industry related to privacy, right, in the past year. So, what has been impactful for app marketers, and how has their approach to privacy changed or even evolved over the past year?
Yeah, definitely. Privacy has definitely been a huge focus in the ecosystem. And with iOS 14.5 released and their updated privacy policies, and also future players in the ecosystem following suit, we are seeing a shift on the data side. And now I have two trains of thoughts on this, so I'll go through each of them. The first one is, in order to maintain that user level data for campaign optimization and performance, specifically in iOS, we need to work on educating the end users on sharing their IDFA in the ATT prompt. And adding reasons as to why this is important to the business before the ATT prompt does help with IDFA opt-in rates. However, it doesn't start there. You also need to get consent by building a relationship with a customer earlier on in the brand marketing side. Pure performance play is no longer viable, and building the value and trust is important, especially before that even that ATT prompt or that install occurs. And the more you've developed that relationship with your end users, the more IDFA opt-ins you'll get. And from there, you'll have that user level campaign data to help drive your decisions and also remarket these users. And then now my second thought, which is we might start to see campaign optimization strategies start shifting from user level to an aggregate level. Back in the day, mobile marketers optimized campaigns at the aggregate level and utilized media mix modeling. But over time, as user level data became more available, businesses have built data pipelines and infrastructures and developed strategies based on that data set. But now that there's a focus on privacy and a shift in data back into aggregated levels, as marketers, continue to perform campaign optimization with the level of sophistication that we're used to make those key business decisions. So that's the big question. And we're starting to think about at AppsFlyer how to utilize small data sets of aggregated data in the initial stages of a campaign to inform the optimization process earlier on and make those decisions, right? We don't want to go back to the state where we're making these decisions in an uninformed state. And so how do we find and strike this new balance? AppsFlyer has thought about, we have a product called Predict that run these predictive algorithms at an aggregate level to help provide these key insights at the initial stages of campaigns. But in general, these are just things that the ecosystem and advertisers will have to start to think about, especially in the coming years, of how to navigate this changing data landscape.
Yeah, and speaking of privacy, I think this is the question of the 2020s. That's a decade we're in, right? 2020. Okay. took me a second to figure that one out. So 2020s, I think this is the question for marketers of the 2020s. And it will go to Angela. Can privacy and personalization coexist in advertising?
Yeah, so I think Brenda really expanded upon it also within the last question, but just to add to the app tracking transparency prompt and that relationship with your user and that trust, I think it's also explaining to your user exactly what like the details are of opting in and opting out, where I think if you just leave your prompt with the general language that Apple is using, I don't think it's enough information for the user on the other end. So it's important to customize that prompt by adding more language that describes it. And also some of our advertisers are using pre-prompts as well. So that's like really drilling down on what that looks like. We are in a free to download app ecosystem. And so you're going to be seeing ads regardless of whether you opt in or opt out. So I think it's important to explain that, by opting in, it will be customized to more of your truer interest and personalized for you, versus you're going to be advertised to anyway when you opt out, and maybe that aggregate level data will give you some of your more truer interests. But it's like, why not opt in where you can actually receive what I was talking about with my fall sweater? Like, I want to be shown the sweater that I want. So I do think it can coexist. I think it has to do with what Brenda mentioned with like building that trust. And then we are seeing positive opt-in rates, because I think because of that customization on those messaging. For Android, I think we're ready for that challenge as well with the iOS experience. And so I hope that the results will be the same there.
You mean you can't just post a 2,500 word privacy policy with a link to GDPR for customers?
Not like that, but something like it.
Yeah. All right, so we, I think, have reached the final question in our fireside chat. Yes, indeed we have. And we're going to look to the future. So we're here next October, 2022. We're all back. I think someone's agreeing with you in the background there. Someone's honking the horn saying, yeah, I'm all for privacy too. I wonder what they think about the future of e-commerce in 2022. But you know what? We're going to go with Brenda instead and Angela to give their final thoughts. So Brenda, we'll start with you. E-commerce 2022, what's happening?
Yeah, I think it will be definitely very exciting. Just kind of circle back on a few items that I've already hit on. I think in-store user experiences and journeys will be more integrated into the mobile app, and we'll see, there will be more mobile-driven decisions and competition will increase. And over time, users will stick to apps that have better functionality. And relying on that brand halo isn't good enough anymore. So we may see a shift in mobile apps away from brands into apps that have just better user experience and capabilities. And for marketers, on the other hand, it will be very complicated in this ever-changing ecosystem, right? Now there is a focus on privacy and how advertisers can leverage data for targeting and optimization. Tomorrow might be something else. So as long as businesses can navigate these challenges and adjust their strategy accordingly, they will find success. But there may not be an immediate solution, and it's just something that we'll have to work together on.
Yeah. And Angela, final thoughts on that. In our dry run, you channeled Cher. So did Cher make the live? Did Cher make the live cut? Let us know.
Yeah. So I remember as a kid that the most futuristic thing I ever saw when it came to shopping and like styling myself was the scene in Clueless, the classic 90s time capsule film, where Cher, the main character, is picking out her outfits for school that day using her desktop computer, and she's overlaying images of her outfits on a picture of herself, and then the iconic yellow plaid ensemble is what she chooses. That was, I think, the most futuristic thing I ever saw. And obviously we've come a long way from there, and I'm excited to see as a consumer where we'll be going. I think the biggest thing that marketers will be noting and appealing to would be Gen Z. So Gen Z is a population that really cares about, political climate and also the environment. And I think they're going to want to have brands actually reflect the values that they carry and really like own up to what they're how they're going to be, helping moving forward. They also have the largest disposable income, less bills to pay, living at home for longer, choosing not to get a car. They are true digital natives who are spending money on in-app currency more so than like physical goods. And for example, brands like Balenciaga are bringing digital fashion to Fortnite, and Gen Z is spending a digital currency on those items and skins. They're not wearing that in real life. They just want to see how they're looking on like Fortnite. And it'll be interesting to see more companies make efforts to appeal to them, be more green, and see what they actually like buy into.
I'm going to say the lead characters in Clueless's line in a business meeting coming up soon. I'm going to say, as if. I want to see how that sticks. So at this point, thanks for the fireside chat. I don't think there was any fire, so it was just a chat, unfortunately. Not living up to our marketing promises there, guys. But nonetheless, we do move on to the Q&A. And guess what? Man, we have a lot of questions, just a ton of questions. Thank you so much from the audience for asking. You already know how to do it. You see it. you're in the game. So thank you for that. So let's just get right into it. So let's go with question number one. We'll start with just, hey, this is shopping season now. We're in it. What things should be top of mind for the shopping season? Is this something that should be, built up throughout the year? I'm thinking of shopping. This listener is. So Angela, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, marketers plan the whole year for like a retail app marketers will plan throughout the whole year for this time of year. And that would be also from the app developer level, like research and development, like what worked last season, what won't work this season, what are the trends currently. So lots of like discussions, lots of R&D work on the app. Maybe there's like a whole section that's just related to that season itself. And then on top of that, it's the how are you going to change up your creative messaging and all of that planning as well. So it's obviously to keep in mind of like what sort of messaging are you putting out there, what deals are you promoting, and what's like the time frame that you start to release that messaging, things like that. So it does take a lot of planning for sure.
Brenda, you want to add on to that one?
Yeah, and then one more thing I just wanted to add on is just to make sure that you're aware of fraud, right? You will start to see that as you scale up your spend, especially during that Q4 time period. And as you're trying these new partners and strategies, just make sure you have a solid fraud detection platform that's able to help detect that during your periods of high spend. So that's probably the one additional note I would add to that.
Great. All right, moving on to the next one. So when you're running advertising campaigns, what are segments and personas, and why are they important, for shopping apps? Angela?
It's important within the app that you map all of the in-app events with your MMP, where you're tracking that user journey. So from the install to sign up to adding to cart to purchase and all the other events that would be in between. And you can hone in on the quality users that may have dropped off and they've shown maybe some initial interest, or especially if they're further in the flow, but maybe didn't complete to the actual final purchase. So for example, if they added to cart, but then dropped off, but you would want to re-engage them to bring them back in and maybe even show them the item that they left in there and prompt them to go to that final purchase level. So it's important to understand your audiences and work with your data analyst team and or with an MMP. It's essentially like its own like built-in data management platform as well. And Brenda mentioned a lot of other features within AppsFlyer, and like I'm a big fan. So definitely like work with your team on how you can understand that audience and where you should be hitting them at what point.
Yeah, and if you're targeting the Alicia Silverstone persona, just throw plaid at her and everything will be happy. Brenda, you want to add on to that one about personas and segments?
No, not really. Angela pretty much summed it up pretty well for me. I think, having those segments, being able to run tests on them, see how they perform, I think, she pretty much wrapped it all up for me.
Nice. All right, moving on. So this next question is about privacy, which we discussed, which is great. If one wants to be best in class for privacy, right? Such a struggle, there's such a challenge. What would you recommend as a practice in addition to the disclosure of a privacy policy, not the 2,500 word one, like I said, and what cookies capture? So those are two basic things, the addition of the disclosure of privacy policy and cookies. So Brenda, I'll give this one to you if you want it. Is there anything in addition to that that's a good start to start really building that good privacy practice foundation?
Yeah, definitely. I think right now there is definitely a stigma in the ecosystem, especially around tracking. Using the terminology tracking is already a very scary terminology. So maybe first off, don't use that because it can be a catch-all of all tracking purposes, and just be more specific as to why you need the data set and how you're using it, right? Being able to sort of explain why this is important for your business and how this is important for the end users and the user experience does help alleviate a lot of the possible concerns and the stigma around what tracking means. So I think that is a good strategy that a lot of our clients took in terms of building that explanation and really truly getting to the details of how we're using the data so that the end users aren't scared to allow to track, even though track is not what we want to call it.
Gotcha. Moving on, a lot of future-minded attendees here, thinking of the future. So that's great. Everyone has the next, the next year on the mind. So Gary, this is from a listener. So do you think e-commerce apps will be less relied on after the pandemic? So when everything kind of subsides, what's the trend you're seeing out there for the future when the pandemic subsides? Brenda, why don't you take that one to start?
Yeah, and I think I talked about it a little bit, so I would also love to hear Angela's perspective on this. But I think it's possible that it will be less relied on, but that's why it's important to maintain solid features within the application that will keep users in there, right? So this will just enable users to build that behavior, that habit to shop within the app. I've personally noticed that myself. I used to always shop on desktop, right? You saw there was more real estate on the desktop, so you can actually see more. But actually, I've been so exhausted working every day on my desktop that I've actually moved over to mobile and shopped on my phone just because I'm on my computer all day. And apps that have great functionality, I find myself opening into those push notifications and those emails, campaigns, and just going like, okay, I might as well browse while I'm watching another screen on TV, right? So I think being able to just keep those users within the application with great features and functionalities and lifecycle marketing and retargeting, that will definitely keep those e-commerce users in the application.
And Angela, you wanted to add to that one too?
Yeah, I do think e-commerce apps are here to stay. I definitely agree with Brenda. I don't want to look at my computer anymore at the end of the day. And then I think Brenda mentioned earlier about like the unifying of the going into the store experience, like with the app. And so I think we're going to continue to, combine them. I know we all are itching to like get out more, and we are going to go out and shop and try on. But I think it still is like I think she said it was like a friendly component or something where, having the option to have the app as well as the people are going to keep utilizing it. And on top of that, we still have a lot on social platforms when it comes to e-commerce themselves. It's a lot more product based, a lot more, clothing and shopping and makeup and things like that. So, we're having influencers promoting. So we're on apps like listening to voices and seeing these ads. So I think they're here to stay.
All right. Well, thanks for your thoughts on that. And sort of related question, with the practice of app marketing, will this continue to be the new frontier of advertising, you think? One of our attendees is asking. Or, will companies continue to use this and other innovative ways to reach customers as well? Angela, any thoughts there?
I think still continuing to add more features that, again, bring that experience of in-person and all these other ways that you're interacting. There's also like bigger events that are wanting to be planned, things like that. But then how would you know about it? And maybe you'll receive a push notification of an in-store event that's happening. So I think being able to reach your user on these devices, like they're in my hand all the time kind of thing. So I think as long as you keep up with like the push notifications, the email marketing and advertise across, it's all going to be all top of mind because you're just constantly seeing it wherever you look kind of thing. But yeah, I think in general, using your apps is a way to bring more value to your brands, and it's more personal to you and with you at all times.
Absolutely. Let's go with Brenda on the next one. What are your best practices to catching in-app fraud? Great question. Brenda, you want to discuss that a bit?
Yeah, definitely. So having a partner in the fraud ecosystem will help because they will help do a lot of that automated data science in the back end and AI to detect when there are different behavior patterns that look odd. And we'll be able to flag specific things that look like fraud and install and specifically campaign fraud, right? But then also something else I would also highlight, this is what I typically recommend with my clients, is churn metrics, right? So if people are clicking on a campaign, they're converting, but then they end up returning the item immediately. But then the conversions get attributed back to that campaign and they credit, but the actual purchase never occurred. So adding specific churn metrics into your data pipelines are actually a really good way for you to even just look at the metrics, look at the user flows and see, hey, does that even make sense? And so I think having a combination of churn metrics and working with a provider that does this and automates this for you will probably be what I would say best practice in terms of catching fraud.
And Brenda, stay on the podium for a second. Another one for you. Did you attribute the increase? The question is, did you attribute the increase in e-commerce to the drop in in-store or in-restaurant purchases?
Yes, definitely. So there is that shift, right? That user behavior pattern of pre-COVID, people would go into stores and purchase, and now they are moving over to the mobile just because they physically can't go in. But I think long term, also the behavior patterns of people being comfortable ordering in and ordering on their apps will still probably be there, especially as people are starting to shift into going out again. I think there might be a little bit of shift back and forth, but as those behavior patterns develop, you'll get that user base in your mobile apps.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And moving on. Now, this one comes in the terms of downloading apps and how they can actively use it and benefit. So the question is, what is your recommendation to keep those who downloaded the app, to keep actively using and benefiting from it? Like really just, okay, they did it. We got them to download it. That's great. Now the next steps. How do we get them to actively benefit from it? Angela, you want to go with that one?
Sure. So including retargeting, remarketing in your marketing plan from the very beginning is the way to keep them actively using and benefiting from it. So you'll be able to monitor where that drop-off is, at what point, and then you can segment out those audiences based on the actions that they did and didn't do, and remarket them to, continue to stay in, continue to be engaged, and to perform those actions that drive more revenue and have that lifetime user. I think having your brand not be like stagnant and changing things up, be more enticing, adding new features to an app are super helpful. And you can display that in the messaging when you do your retargeting, remarketing campaigns. So I think keeping that at top of mind, and of course you're utilizing your email marketing and push notifications as well.
Yeah, and right in line with that remarketing strategy, Angela, another one for you, and Brenda, you're certainly welcome to weigh in too. Are there issues with remarketing on different platforms now due to Apple's decision that we talked about?
Yeah, of course, there was a bit of a hiccup and upheaval, but we do balance out as an industry whenever any sort of, storm comes into play. But it's been more interesting to see how we can still reach our audiences using like other data signals. And then again, with that, customizing your messaging on the prompt and allowing your users to feel more comfortable to opt in and have that personalization, we're able to continue the remarketing. And we are seeing positive opt-in rates.
Good. So the balance of privacy and personalization in action,
yes.
Right there. It's a I hear both. I hear both sides. It's going to be so hard. This is really a challenge. But then I hear the optimists, saying this will make us better. All right, let's move on. So we're going to go with Angela on this one too. So do you think e-commerce will be affected by possible postal office disruptions? Pretty great question there.
Yeah, I have heard that we should all start like last month. And so I'm already behind. So yeah, it is something to keep in mind with the supply chain, but obviously you can utilize, picking up in store so that it can have not the big of effect of like coming to your home. So utilizing your app to select an in-store option, again, marrying the brick and mortar experience. That was what you said, marrying, not the friend, marrying the brick and mortar experience with the app. So I think, yes, shop now, buy now, but use your in-store option.
Well, you know what? That we've come to the end. I mean, there was so much to unpack with this. We had the presentation at the outset. We had the fireside chat without the fire, and then we had our Q&A. So a lot to unpack there. Thank you for attending this. And the good news is you can unpack it down the road if you'd like, because the webinar has been recorded. A link to the on-demand video will be emailed to you in a few business days. So look out for that. You can share with your colleagues, friends. And thanks to Brenda and Angela, of course, for speaking today. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much. And, of course, AppsFlyer, our sponsor today. Yeah, AppsFlyer, partnering up with CMS Wire. It was great to work with all of you. AppsFlyer was a sponsor today. So if your company is interested in sponsoring a webinar just like this one, just email us, webinars@cmswire.com. So for now, we are signing off. We're going to put out the fictional fire and end things. And we thank you so much for joining. And by the way, we hope you're all safe, healthy, and happy. Thanks for joining us today. Have a good day.
Thanks, everyone.